Think of a dinner table, the clinking of forks against china, the low hum of conversation punctuated by soft laughter. But picture one chair where the air feels different, colder, as if a shadow sits in the empty space beside it, where a child sits, holding their breath, believing their very presence is a mistake that cracks the family portrait. This isn't just a sad scene. This is the silent, formative reality for the hated child. And the psychological architecture built in those frozen moments doesn't just shape a childhood, it builds the adult.
That little boy at the table, he doesn't talk much. He has learned the hard way that the wrong word, the wrong tone, the mere sound of his voice can make the room go cold, can freeze a smile on a parent's face into a grimace. So he stares at his plate, moving food around, performing the smallest magic trick he knows, hoping to disappear into the pattern of the tablecloth. He watches his sister earn a radiant smile for sharing her mundane day. He hears his brother get warm, eager encouragement for his average grades. But when he speaks, the air stiffens, the clocks seem to tick louder. His words are treated not as innocent mistakes, but as quiet offenses, a disruption to the harmony he is somehow always outside of. He feels deep in his marrow like an intruder in his own home. This is the silent reality of the hated child. It's rarely about shouted words or visible cruelty. It's hatred in energy, in the subtle, devastating cues, in the sigh that greets them when they enter a room, heavy with unspoken burden, in the way their presence feels like a static disruption to the family rhythm, rather than a part of its melody. For so many people, this isn't a scene from a story. It's a memory written in the nervous system. It's the echo of their own past, a ghost that sets the table every night.
The human heart is born seeking one thing above all: belonging. It seeks the warmth of safety, the anchor of acceptance, the mirror that reflects back, "You are here, and that is good." A child does not arrive with walls built. They are open, fragile, utterly hungry for love as a fundamental nutrient. When that love is withheld, or worse, replaced with a simmering, passive resentment, the child doesn't merely feel unloved. They internalize something far more corrosive. They feel unworthy of love, inherently defective, and that difference is everything. Being unloved is a condition, a circumstance imposed from outside, but feeling unworthy, that becomes an identity, a core truth. It seeps into the foundation of the self like a slow, structural damp.
Psychologists have mapped this terrain. John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, showed us that a child's earliest bonds form the blueprint for every relationship that follows, the template for how to love and be loved. When those bonds are warm, consistent, and secure, the child grows with an internal compass pointing steadfastly toward connection. But when the bond is cold, hostile, or inconsistently available, the child internalizes that rejection as a law of the universe. They carry it like a hidden gravitational weight into every corner of their life. So the hated child becomes the adult who still flinches at a raised voice, even when no one is raising a hand, who apologizes for taking up space on a sidewalk, for needing help, for simply existing, who hears a pause in conversation as a personal indictment, a silence meant specifically for them. And here is the first cruel twist of the psychology. The hated child often doesn't even have the language for what's happening. They don't think, "I am being hated." To a child, parents aren't just caregivers. They are the architects of reality itself, the gods who define truth. If a parent shows disdain, the child's mind doesn't conclude, "My parent is flawed." It concludes with the brutal survivalist logic of dependency, "I must be flawed. My essence is wrong." Their young psyche bends itself into impossible knots to protect the essential bond. The pain transforms into self-blame. The rejection hardens into identity. This is why so many hated children grow into adults haunted by the same quiet, relentless questions that play on a loop. Am I enough? Do I deserve love? Why does simple connection feel like navigating a minefield where I am both the victim and the bomb?
One of the most corrosive aspects of this experience is the silent curriculum of comparison. When love and attention are unevenly distributed among siblings, the hated child becomes a forensic scholar of disparity. They notice who gets praised for a B+ and who gets a blank stare for an A-. They see who gets held a moment longer, a touch softer, after a scraped knee. They catalog whose stories are listened to with eager, leaning-in eyes, and whose are met with distracted nods and a gaze already drifting away. The contrast is rarely a dramatic, operatic scene of favoritism. It's subtler, and in some ways more devastating because it is deniable. Less eye contact, a shorter fuse, a celebration that feels obligatory, perfunctory, for their small victories, devoid of genuine warmth. But to the child's nervous system, which is designed with laser precision to detect threat and safety, the message is unmistakable, broadcast on a frequency only they can hear. You are different. You are less. Your joy is an inconvenience. This environment conditions the child to expect rejection, even in places that are meant to be safe, to be sanctuaries. A teacher's critique isn't just feedback, it's proof of their fundamental incompetence. A friend's canceled plan isn't a scheduling conflict, it's a personal dismissal they saw coming. A partner's bad mood isn't just a bad day, it's the first piece of evidence for what they have always suspected deep down, in the vault of their heart. I am not wanted. Studies in developmental psychology confirm this profound reshaping of perception. Children who experience persistent parental rejection often grow into adults with lower self-esteem and higher levels of anxiety and depression. But the impact goes deeper than mood. It changes the very soil of the mind. It changes how the brain itself processes social information. The neural pathways that scan for threat become overdeveloped, superhighways of vigilance. In essence, the hated child grows into an adult who sees rejection even where it does not exist, who hears condemnation in neutral tones. The lens carved in childhood colors and perpetually distorts the vision of a lifetime. In response, these children often become ingenious, heartbreaking survivalists. They develop what psychologists call compensatory strategies, desperate, elegant attempts to earn the love that feels perpetually just out of reach, a mirage they must keep chasing. Some become relentless perfectionists, believing that flawless achievement, a spotless record, will finally make them worthy of a glance, a smile, a moment of genuine pride. Others become chameleonic people-pleasers, sanding down their own edges, molding themselves into whatever shape they think might gain approval until they forget their original form. And some go the opposite route, adopting rebellion as a suit of armor. They push others away with defiance or disinterest, reasoning with a child's wisdom that it's better to reject first than to feel the familiar, annihilating sting of being rejected yet again. But underneath the straight-A report card, the agreeable persona, or the rebellious stance, lies the same raw, pulsing wound. I was not accepted for who I am. My authentic self is not welcome here.
Perfectionism, rebellion, hypercompliance, these are masks, costumes worn for survival. They are survival mechanisms, not identities. Yet the tragedy is that the hated child often forgets this distinction. They confuse the mask with their own face, the performance with their soul. They live for decades under the weight of a role they never consciously chose, believing this exhausting performance is who they truly are, that the ache is part of their personality. And why does this silent struggle matter so much? Because unspoken pain doesn't vanish. It goes underground. It ferments in the dark. It begins to shape life choices in invisible, powerful ways. For example, a hated child may find themselves again and again drawn to partners who are critical, withholding, or emotionally distant, who feel like home. This isn't a conscious desire for pain. It's because the dynamic feels familiar, known. The brain, seeking to resolve old wounds, often drags us back to the scene of the original crime, hoping for a different ending, a rewrite. It gravitates toward what it knows, even when what it knows is harmful, because the unknown of healthy love feels terrifyingly unfamiliar. This is how the cycle echoes forward, generation after generation, not out of malice, but out of unhealed patterns repeating in the dark, passed down like a phantom inheritance.
Let's look at this through the lens of biology, because this pain is not just emotional, it's physiological, etched into the body. When a child feels the cold wall of rejection, their nervous system interprets it as a direct threat to survival, no less than a predator in the room. Stress hormones like cortisol flood their small body, a chemical alarm. Over time, this repeated alarm state literally reshapes the developing brain's architecture. Neuroscience research shows that chronic childhood rejection is linked to a heightened hair-trigger amygdala, the brain's fear center, and a less active prefrontal cortex, which is meant to regulate those fears, to provide reason to the panic. What does this mean in everyday life? It means the hated child grows into an adult who is hyper-vigilant, constantly scanning rooms and faces for micro-signs of danger, a human Geiger counter for disdain. It means they may overreact to a perceived slight, not because they're dramatic, but because their internal alarm system is screaming at a volume meant for genuine peril. It means that peace feels unnerving, suspicious, while a certain level of tension and chaos feels like home. It's the water they learn to swim in. And yet, within this adaptation lies a paradoxical, powerful gift. The hated child often becomes exquisitely, painfully sensitive to the emotional atmospheres of others. They can read a room with uncanny accuracy, sense a shift in mood before a word is spoken, feel the tension in a tightened jaw or a false smile. This isn't magic, it's a survival skill honed under duress. When your emotional safety depended on predicting the weather in someone else's eyes, you become a master meteorologist of human emotion. This deep sensitivity, once healed and integrated, can transform into profound empathy, deep intuition, and a capacity for understanding nuanced pain that others may lack. It becomes a superpower of connection, forged in the very fire that sought to isolate them. Here is perhaps the most isolating tragedy. The hated child is not always visibly mistreated. They often grow up in families that look perfectly normal, even happy from the outside. There are birthdays with cakes, holidays with gifts, photo albums full of coordinated smiles. But inside the child, there is a quiet, constant feeling of being unseen, of being a ghost at the feast, perpetually on the wrong foot in their own life. This invisible emotional neglect can hurt more than open hostility, because there's no proof, no scars to show. There's nothing concrete to point to and say, this is why I ache. So they turn the doubt inward, becoming their own prosecutor. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe this is just what love feels like, and I'm too broken to feel it right. This internal gaslighting, this self-betrayal, becomes a second, deeper layer of the wound, a prison built from the inside. So where does the story turn? How does the hated child, now an adult, begin to rewrite a narrative that feels etched in stone, in their very bones? It begins with a simple, revolutionary act: compassionate awareness. Healing starts the moment you look back with gentle eyes and recognize that child you once were, not as a shameful secret, but as a survivor. Not to dwell endlessly in blame, but to see the pattern clearly, to name the weather you lived in. Because what is not seen is doomed to be repeated in endless loops. Psychologists call the next step reparenting. It is the daily, deliberate practice of offering yourself, as a capable and caring adult, the nurture, validation, and unconditional regard you needed, but never received. It is speaking to yourself in the quiet moments, in the voice you deserved. You are worthy. You are lovable. You belong here. Your feelings are valid. These are words your nervous system has been waiting a lifetime to hear. Words that can begin to melt the permafrost. The science of neuroplasticity gives us fierce hope here. It confirms that our brains are not fixed monuments to past trauma. While early rejection may wire us for fear and vigilance, new relationships built slowly on consistency, safety, and earned trust can rewire us for security. This is called an earned, secure attachment. It means you can learn to trust, to soften, to put down the armor piece by piece. You can teach your amygdala through repeated evidence that the war is over, that safety is now possible.
It means that the deep biological ache for belonging can finally be met, often through chosen family, the friends, partners, therapists, communities where you are seen and valued, not for what you do or provide, but for the simple, radiant fact of who you are. So let's return to that dinner table, to that little boy staring at his plate, trying to vanish into the ether. Perhaps that child is still within you, waiting in that same silence. The most profound healing begins right now, in this moment, when you choose to finally meet them, to turn inward and look that young self in the eye and say what no one else did, with the full force of your present-day strength. I see you.
You were never too much. You were always enough. Your existence is not a disruption. It is a gift. I am here for you now. You begin to belong the moment you offer belonging to that forgotten, exiled part of yourself. Because the final, liberating truth is this: the hated child was never truly hated. They were a lonely heart waiting for a love that begins not from the outside in, but from the inside, radiating outward like a long-awaited dawn. And that love, it's yours to give. It always was. Start here. Start now.